Call of Duty is back, baby, and oh my word, we have a ton to talk about today. Obviously, the CDL kickoff event was this weekend, and we are going through it all today. The biggest matchup, some crazy storylines, some rookie debuts, and everything that we learned this weekend, and we're gonna be showing a lot of these highlights, so I hope you guys are ready for this one, boys. Oh my word, let's get right into it. Let's go. Coming in hot there for the intro, but my goodness, I'm not underestimating how much we got to talk about today. So, of course, starting off the weekend, there were so many questions going in. Like, how are these rookies going to perform? We had 3 rookies debuting this weekend in the kickoff event. Of course, it's a pre-season event, so it doesn't technically count for anything. So we were going to be learning a lot about these teams, though, and how they were planning on playing this season. So many storylines. OpTic versus 100 Thieves. Absolutely insane. So kicking off the weekend, we had that Dallas versus New York matchup, which of course, there were a lot of questions on the New York side about this roster. So Asim played, Hydra didn't because he's still stuck in Paris. And then of course, after Zuma's retirement, surprise retirement last weekend, they brought up Diamoncon from the AMP scene, who's been so good the past basically year or so inside the AMP scene, and he got to debut as well. So this team was playing on like a week of practice, and obviously they got 3-0. Dallas Empire looked incredible. ILLeY, of course, was highlighted as the guy this weekend. He had some insane moments, as you guys are seeing here. Obviously, there was the ILLeY 3v1, which I'll show you right here.
Gonna keep him safe for now. Huke trying to get involved. Does find one. Matt cuts him down immediately. Lovely trade. Shotzzy now from up high, but he goes down to Asim as well. Wonderful stuff. ILLeY now in the 1 versus 2. Oh boy, makes it a 1 versus 1. Can Mac stop the bleeding and cut him down? The aggression's right here, but ILLeY! Oh no!
So he was frying him, of course, and then he clutched up in a control. And I mean, not to mention, Shotzzy came out looking insane in the hard point as well. So basically everything you expect from Dallas, we got, which only makes sense at the end of the day. They're going to be a really good team. And on the podcast, we'll be talking about the groups here for Series 1. My goodness, it's crazy. And Dallas is looking pretty good moving forward. And then for New York, I mean, this is probably the best thing that could have happened to them, having a pretty big time matchup early on in their time as a squad together to kind of give a good feel for where they need to improve and what they need to work on. S&D was going to be sloppy this weekend anyway, but honestly, I mean, we saw a lot from Diamoncon that made me think that, okay, there might be something here for him in the long term in the CDL, which is pretty exciting for New York fans. And then, I mean, as a whole, I think the New York team still has a ton of potential with the squad they currently have, and that's still to be debated what's going to happen with Hydra and Asim. So there's so many factors there with New York at this point, but either way, I think you have to be optimistic as a New York fan moving forward. And if you're a Dallas fan, you gotta be feeling good after seeing the nastiness of ILLeY and Shotzzy specifically on the map, but not to mention Huke and Crim both played very, very well in this series. So as a whole, Dallas is looking great. So in our second match, we had an interesting one. Seattle versus LAG. Obviously the storylines here with Apathy and Octane and what's going to happen with this new roster. How is Looney, how is Pristini going to perform slaying SMGs, playing with those SMGs in hand? And it didn't necessarily always look great for Seattle. At the end of the day, LAG felt like they were a little bit more put together. From the LAG perspective, which shout out, by the way, I'm wearing their hoodie, shout out LAG. But from their perspective, I think they present quite a bit of upside moving forward. It's hard to say exactly where these two teams sit. You know, they played a lot of raid, which was great to see. Shout out the Vito's for picking some raids to play on the series. Overall, I felt like Seattle was lacking that slaying power still. It looked a little bit better throughout the series, and we saw them splitting search and destroys, and overall, they came up just a little bit short at the end of the day in Game 5. For Seattle, you definitely can't lose hope in this team at this point, but I do think that there is some valid room for concern when it comes to their slaying upside with the SMGs right now with Pristini and Looney. But you do have to be excited about the improvements you saw in Search and Destroy and looking good in control. The question marks are still going to come inside hardpoint right now, and they got a lot of stuff to work through in that way. And then as for LAG, I'm really looking forward to this squad, man. They were fun to watch. Vivid looked great. And a combination of that team, I think, can work in the long term. I'm still not exactly sure about like top 6 upside, and I don't think either of these two teams right now are that great. I do think that there is still potential for LAG to continue to improve and be pretty competitive here moving into stage 1. Now heading into this last game on Saturday night, this was the big one. I mean, this was FaZe versus the Mutineers. Of course, Neptune debuting for the Mutineers with the squad. Slacked, of course, you know, making his debut for the Mutineers as well with Awakening, with Skies. And they came to play. In that first hard point though, they had a pretty big lead, like 60 or so points. And then FaZe came back and they were slaying out on the last 2 hills. And that was where I was like, oh, this is the FaZe. We were waiting for FaZe to awaken, no pun intended. And they finally were awoke. And then it all fell apart for them later on in that series. And the Mutineers looked really, really good. So, you know, I do love me some round 11s around here. So this one went down to the wire. Let's roll it and check it out.
To work with. Oh, Slack tagged up heavily. Maybe someone will go for the push now. Skies are out by the back. Beautiful timing. Simps out. See you in the next map. Trade's yet to come through. Celium getting aggressive. Abeezy just so unlucky to look left when he should have gone the other way. Oh my, an Awakening is going to get away with his life. That is a staggering kill. Now, Atlanta FaZe. 2 players down. Arstes is going to try to pull this one back. Now it's going to be all on him. 1v3. Awakening gets the tags. Here comes the follow through. Neptune in a situation now where he should be able to take this fight, but Arstes is going to make him really work for it. 20 seconds remaining. That's going to be that. The Florida Mutineers, they just outmaneuver FaZe in those final few moments. And
oh, the ice in the veins, baby. Let's go. I just think it's really interesting that the Mutineers took both S&Ds and they looked fantastic in both maps. That's definitely not what you would expect from a team with a former Halo pro on it, who may not have as much, experience, definitely not as much experience playing against pros in Search and Destroy. And then, Slack, who's coming from Seattle last year, who really struggled inside S&D. Of course, that's not necessarily Slack's, career history where he struggled in S&D. But last year specifically on Seattle, they definitely struggled in S&D. And for them to come out and really look impressive, of course, Skies dominated on that Garrison S&D. I mean, overall, you've got to be really, really excited about Florida. If you were a Florida fan, this team has so much potential, unlimited potential at this point with how they could play. Awakening and Skies are the real deal. Neptune and Slack are very good as well. And there's still so much upside for the type of player that Neptune could be. And so overall, man, wow. Couldn't have been more of an impressive debut from Florida as a whole. And as for FaZe, obviously you would have liked to see them come out and dominate as a FaZe fan. You assumed that they would, but that wasn't the case. The S&Ds, the strats just weren't there yet. Which again, the S&D is the game mode. If you're FaZe, that's okay. I think S&D is the game mode where teams can see the most improvement by dedicating time and putting a little more time into it. Just to be realistic, not all teams have put that much time into Search and Destroy at this point. And you saw that in this event at points where you're just like, sometimes some of the plays that some teams made no sense. And it wasn't good fundamental Call of Duty. So I'd imagine most of my learn from the pros videos will be coming from like Control and from Hardpoint in this series. Maybe not as much from S&D. I don't think you gotta be too worried as a FaZe fan at this point, but there is a little bit of reason for concern that they struggle in S&D. I still think the upside's absolutely there for FaZe to be a dominant team moving forward in the CDL. But Florida, don't get me wrong, Florida established themselves as a top 4 team in the CDL for sure right now with how they played against FaZe. Then in the next match, we had another rookie debut, the first match on Sunday, and that was Fire making his debut for the Paris Legion. And baby, they made it happen, man. Paris Legion won their first match, even though it's a preseason match in the CDL, and they beat London 3-2. Of course, Zero was playing on 100 plus ping, like probably like 120, 150 ping at times, maybe more at moments, because he was playing from Europe because he still hasn't got here. And so that is a factor in the series. But Zero, I mean, at the end of the day, still looked really impressive in this series, even playing on high ping. For the few Paris fans out there, you've got to be at least pretty excited about this team. Fire looks like a legitimately solid player. And overall, the team played some really good team Call of Duty, even though they've had their struggles. And as for London, I mean, you still have to be pretty optimistic about the team. Although there were some question marks with how, like, the strats that they used in certain points at S&D, especially on Miami. I mean, Miami's not a good map by any means, don't get me wrong. And it'll probably get taken out eventually if Express gets added in here in the next, few months or 2 months or 2 weeks or whatever it is. When Express gets added in, Miami will probably get taken out. But regardless, London did not seem to have very many strats for that map at all. Looked pretty bad there. I feel like overall, neither of these teams proved to be dominant in any means. They're probably still in the middle of the pack, towards the back of the pack. But there's definitely upside for both these guys moving forward, and you got to feel good about Paris right now. So into the last two matches of the weekend, the Ultra versus the Rokkr. The Rokkr clutched up in a round 11 game 5 to make it happen against Toronto. Let's roll it. Check it out.
They've taken a shot, dude, but I will say you've heard enough noise there that Rokkr have managed to back one up. 3 players at the top now. One of them's going to drop down. We've still got a lot of mid-map presence being felt. Accuracy's going to get the first blood. Cammy almost transitions onto the second, but it's going to be the CleanX now from top green to do what he can against Attach. He knows he's down there. 2v3 situation. Things are starting to get a little bit hot. Still got Methods up on top cap, watching this now. Again, waiting for someone on Rokkr to make a mistake. That's the game plan right now for Toronto. They don't have the numbers to work with. And that's a huge win from Accuracy. A massive kill at long range. In all the silence, now it falls. CleanX, he's your man. Can he get the 1v3 now for the win? Damage dealt, not enough to get it done. Attach, he gets himself his second kill of the game, and what an important one it was. Rokkr finally closed out the series in what was an incredibly exciting run.
It got a little close and Toronto didn't trust themselves in that Garrison S&D. They could have made it happen too if they would have just trusted their play call in round 11, but it didn't work out. Rokkr clutch up, make it happen. Again, I honestly thought if we were going to see a top like 4 performance from the Rokkr, they needed to come out, make this at least a 3-1, maybe a 3-0. And that wasn't the case. And that could mean that Ultra is better than I thought they were, or that could just mean that Rokkr aren't as solidified right now as I thought they were either, but they looked really good off the rip. The Rokkr took a hot 3-0 in the control, which again, that's hard to do in control nowadays with how defense plays. So you gotta feel pretty good about that. Major Maniac, the dirty, dirty man in Search and Destroy. He was playing so well on Garrison. But I think the storyline of this series was what Bance was doing on the map. This man's nasty. And that was the question mark for the Toronto team, I think, heading into this year, was how Bance was going to perform. And man, I had massive question marks. I doubted him. So I got to apologize, Bance, because you were showing out and looked fantastic and was going off in both the respawns. In the Garrison hardpoint, Bance went 37-22, and in the checkmate hardpoint, Bance went 33-18. So he was dominating, bro, and looking really, really good all the way through. So you gotta be impressed with that. CleanX struggled in that first hardpoint, and it was actually pretty crazy that the Ultra even won it, because they were really, it felt like they were getting outslayed. Methods had a bad map, CleanX got bodied, but they still won thanks to Bance and that performance there. The Rokkr had every opportunity, I think, to come out here and dominate, but they still got some things to iron out with how they played. And both these teams feel like middle of the pack type teams in CDL right now, like top 6-ish. You gotta be pretty excited for the Ultra though, with Bance doing that on the map, because that skyrockets their upside in the long term versus like what I thought Bance might be versus what he was doing today. So now heading into the match we were all waiting to see, obviously. 100T versus OpTic Gaming, LA Thieves versus Optic Chicago. And the viewers showed up, 100K viewers for it too, which is pretty exciting. And my goodness, OpTic Gaming made a statement. They are back. They are here to stay. And we saw the difference that the internet can make, the motivation, the 4v4, having these guys back. T2P was in full power during this match and looked incredible. And I gotta say, I mean, I think a lot of you guys have called me out that I've been doubting the ability of FORMAL and SCUMP, at least just a little bit lately, looking back at the last 2 years, but we're back on 4v4. We're back on a Treyarch game on 4v4, and these guys look incredible. And now with FORMAL on the connection, wow. Wow. And basically all of the players on the OpTic roster had a moment where they stood out. Dashy on Garrison, FORMAL, I mean, really throughout the whole series. SCUMP had moments where he was slaying out, dominating on Garrison specifically. And then of course, Envoy in the control went off on like the 11 spree to start it off. So overall, I think there's a lot that you can learn from this whole series, even going just map to map, because I think this series was the one that we had so many question marks from both teams about how this could potentially look. And OpTic showed up in every single way. In the Garrison hardpoint, I mean, LA Thieves, I don't know, they just seem to lack patience. They just didn't play well together as a squad. A lack of trading. Overall, like I said, that patience with how they played didn't seem to be there. And OpTic was outclassing them in every way in that regard. I'm sure they're going to go back to the drawing board and work on that and how they play patiently in those ways. But again, they have guys who aren't necessarily always been the best at playing patiently, like specifically Temp and how he's played. And, you know, he had a very inconsistent, you know, few maps there as a whole as well. I mean, SCUMP was full on slaying in the hard point there with how he was playing off of Dashy. And they didn't even really need Envoy to do too much in that map because SCUMP was just baiting and making it happen like classic SCUMP at moments during that game. And then in the checkmate S&D, we saw at the beginning, Envoy was finessing. Envoy had that insane like pre-fire on the back stairs that found a kill as well. But it was really back and forth. I think LA Thieves, they showed moments of really good S&D playing there. But at the end of the day, like legitimately, the clutchness of OpTic showed up and showed out. And they looked really, really good throughout the S&D as a whole. And we saw important plays from that whole squad throughout that checkmate S&D. Then you head into the control on raid. And again, man, it's Envoy slaying out. And we saw this in BO4 back on Gen G with how good Envoy was at doing that. But now in 4v4, he has so much more space to work with. And there was moments where he was just sitting in their spawn, forcing them to spawn on the far side of the garage or out towards weight room. And LA Thieves didn't even seem to realize that those spawns weren't exactly where they would normally spawn. Later into this game, LA Thieves will know that that's a weird spawn and they should go and try to hunt down Envoy who's blocking the spawns. And that'll change as, you know, teams get more comfortable with that. But again, OpTic just seemed to have a better understanding of the game mode inside of Black Ops Cold War, and that played to their advantage in that series. OpTic looks like a legitimately really, really scary team, especially when SCUMP is slaying like that and Envoy's playing that support role in hardpoint like he was, but then inside of control really pushing out as the slayer, which was really interesting to see that, you know, the slaying role really changed for OpTic depending on the game mode, where SCUMP was really slaying out in hardpoint, but then Envoy was really pushing the pace, creating that map control in control. So I think it's pretty interesting and something to keep your eye on and how those roles play out for OpTic moving forward. But they are a scary team and they solidified themselves inside the top 3 right now, because there were some question marks, some people doubting whether or not that was the case. But man, you're right there. And we're gonna be talking about that on the podcast as well, so be on the lookout for that. But man, it was an exciting weekend. As for LA Thieves, at the end of the day, they have a lot of things they need to figure out. Trophy placements, understanding those spawns inside of control. S&D was the bright spot for LA Thieves at points, but then it just started breaking down at the end of the games. Overall, they have a lot to work with. They're definitely not a top 4 team right now, and maybe in the future they can be, but that is not the case currently. So overall, guys, that's the weekend. That was the kickoff event all the way through. There were so many interesting aspects. The rookies, of course, we're gonna talk a lot more about those on the podcast as well, but Fire, Diamoncon, and Neptune all look fantastic and really look like valuable assets to their teams. And if I had to give the advantage to one of them, I think I would say Neptune impressed the most, specifically considering that they were playing against FaZe and then beat FaZe, while Neptune looked really good throughout that whole series for the most part. So, and considering it was his first event playing as a pro and everything else, I mean, I think Neptune has basically untapped potential, and that Mutineer squad is going to be dangerous moving forward. Now that like Awakening's playing like that, Skies is doing that in S&D. Oh my word, man. They're the most interesting team now moving forward in the launch event, man. And there is so much to talk about coming in these next few weeks leading into the Atlanta home series. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop all your comments down below. Your biggest opinions, your hottest takes, whatever it is. And what's your guys' thoughts on the CDL moving forward? I think it was exciting to see that we had 100,000 viewers for a kickoff event. That's pretty exciting. And hopefully moving forward in these big time matchups, we can hit like the 150, maybe even the 200K mark at times. So if you guys enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, drop all your comments down below. But as always, guys, I'm your boy, ILLeY, and we will see you next time. I'm out.